Because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. Not
It's all
conspiracy.
about control. To them we just cattle, numbers, battling each other while they creeping in the shadows, scheming, plotting, clocking your every move, locked in your mind, brainwashed until it's rocking. Got the population operating as they want them, symbolically mocking them, thinking nothing can stop them. So open your eyes to the lies of the evil, the poison in the minds and the lives of your people. And every time they lead you down a line to deceive you, and by then it's always too late to see through the veil that they hide behind, cause your third eye is blind. Better take a stand, we running out of time. Ain't nobody coming to save us, fuck what you had in mind. Arm yourself with the truth and jump behind the battle line. Can we turn it around? Yeah, it's possible. Divided we'll all fall, but united we're unstoppable. This is for the world, this is for the masses, attached to the strings being pulled by puppet masters. This is for the youth, searching for the proof, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some truth. This is for the ones waking up from the spell, beginning to discover themselves. Yeah, this is for the youth, searching for the truth, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some proof. This is for the world. Yeah.
All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. I'm your host, James Cordiner. Tonight is going to be quite a show. We're going to bring in our guests in just a moment. That intro music is from none other than Joe Murray. So I suggest that everyone go over to freedomforall.online and check out Joe Murray's content and support him in whichever way that you can. He would really, really appreciate the support at this time. Other than that, I just want to bring in one thing, and we're going to talk about how to become the true media. This is an online technology skill sharing seminar hosted by Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com. This year's enrollment starts on, where is it? It starts on April 4th, I believe. His enrollment, April 1st, excuse me. And so this this seminar has helped me out immensely. And every single other person that has participated in the seminar has pretty much the same thing to say. So if you are interested in becoming part of the true media, if you're an up and coming content creator, or if you wish to learn how to become a content creator, then I suggest this course. So pay attention to that. April 1st, enrollment starts, and you can go to howtobecomedetruemedia.com to enroll when enrollment opens. And here's the schedule and everything here. You'll get used to hearing me say this from time to time during the shows. So having that said, we're going to bring in our guests. We got Mr. Will Keller, and we have Mr. Jonathan Wright joining us this evening to have this lovely chat. How are you guys? How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Nice.
I'm doing well.
Thank you for being here, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, James. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Any time that we get a chance to talk about this topic, addiction and recovery and that kind of thing, I like to put my 2 cents in, because I actually, have some decent experience in that. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we did it the first time. I did an Anarchy, Natural Law, and Drug Abuse show. It was you and Joe Murray that joined me for that, and you're here for volume 2. Joe can't make it this time, but we have Will Keller coming in swinging. So yeah. What's up, Will? How are you?
What's up, my brothers? It's a pleasure to be on here, man, and looking forward to this conversation. I think it's an important one as well.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think that the reason why I wanted to really kind of continue talking about this is because I think that there might be a misconception with the idea of anarchy and natural law, autonomy, and having the you know, having the understanding of property rights, and that property being your body being a part of that property, and being able to say, being able to not be a slave, being absolutely free means that you obviously get to choose what happens with your body. And that's wonderful and great. And I'm not here to tell anybody what to do or what not to do, but I think that awareness needs to be raised when it comes to like drug abuse, not drug usage, because that's cool and fun and you can have a good time, but there's got to be a line where it's become drug abuse. And if you're abusing drugs, and this may just be my opinion, you're leaving the door open to be controlled and to be dependent. And that door, it leads to very, very dark places. And I think that if we come together more often, maybe and talk about this and raise awareness of it, then we can also help people realize that being of sound mind and knowing when you're actually abusing a drug, and kind of cutting back on it and being of more sound mind, you're actually able to really participate in this movement of freedom, of anarchy, and teaching and learning natural law. In that arena, you're much more better off, kind of not being necessarily straight edge, but like to kind of be more conscious of what's going on around you. And the drug abuse, like I said, man, the government loves that. The government loves it when you're a drug addict, when you're abusing drugs and alcohol. They love that shit because it means payday for them. Maybe not monetarily, but with your freedom and with your ability to make good choices and to have a true consciousness. So that's kind of where I want to start, because it's kind of the whole reason for this. So
Yeah. Cool.
your thoughts on that, guys? I mean, what do you think about the whole idea?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's important to distinguish, this is kind of where we get into morality and ethics, right? I see morality is that objective foundation. Everything that I mean, all the categories that we need to know to operate in reality, do no harm, right? And then as you kind of progress, you get into the ethical realm of internal vices and the internal ecology of oneself, which does have an effect on your environment and others, but it's not at the level of direct physical harm, like when we're in the realm of morality. So that's kind of important. But yes, I think these social engineers, they obviously understand psychology, and this is where it stems. It stems from the mind. And when they get when someone kind of isn't taking care of that internal ecology, that internal environment, then yeah, absolutely, it's a slippery road. I'm all for, I'm a full-blooded anarchist. So do whatever you like to your body, but understand, having that higher awareness, then you obviously recognize that you're here to learn and grow in consciousness. And learning lessons is fine, but it is that slippery slope where you get into booby traps and snares that are kind of set up in culture and in society. And I'm speaking from firsthand experience, where you have to, reclaim that self-respect, take another look again. And it's ultimately trying to walk that path. It's never a straight line, right? It's always, zigzag or like a spiral if you're lucky. So it's important to kind of to constantly have that awareness, that inner eye of what you're doing to yourself. Are you conscious to even ideologies, belief systems, your emotional stability, and of course the physicality of your vessel and how it's doing?
Yep. Yeah, that's cool, man. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I wanted to kind of maybe touch on how the government and the people in control want us in this addicted state. And they certainly do, because it puts, well, I mean, there's multitude of reasons, but it weakens you. So you're letting your defenses down anytime you're under the influence of anything. Your spiritual defenses are down. So, and with a lot of medicines, plant medicines, you know this, and so you go in with intent, and you do a lot of times even prayers and protection mantras or something of that nature when doing that a lot of times, because it's an awareness that a lot of people have, that you're letting your guard down when you get high or when you use these things. So and the system knows this. So when you are letting your guard down, like not to mention the fact of what spiritual entities might have influence on you, and it just won't be good ones. It's just not how it works. And then, but their programming tactics work much better on you too. And then now they've got you dealing in the black market, because that's just how it goes, which they are fully in control of. So it's what an odd game, because when you get pulled over and arrested, that's those same guys. And so it's just like you're now in the system again, and it's now you're just so ingrained into the system. You're fully controlled. You're fully a slave. And I mean, so that's to me where drugs comes in. And again, yeah, do whatever you want, but and I think that too. I don't really think that spiritually we have the right to harm ourselves. I think we can harm ourselves, but as far as a right goes, I mean, that goes kind of against what right is, in that the definition is doing no harm. So and again, that's an arguable point. I'm not going to like necessarily fight about that, but just the idea that once you've done drugs to a point of learning about them, and like that's what I think fair game. Like, I wanted to know about cocaine. I wanted to know what heroin was, not shooting it, but I wanted to know what it felt like. And I did those things. And so I think spiritually, once you've kind of gotten past that curiosity stage, now you're really kind of just harming yourself with it. And that's my own personal. So that's when the negative karma and the negative side of drugs starts to show itself, because at one point it's just fun and it's cool and you're like, hey man, right on. And then there's a point in individuals' lives, and it's different for everyone, and it's certainly not a judgment that I make, but it is something that all of a sudden now it's not fun anymore. It's not like it was. Now you're doing it for different reasons, and most likely secluded off with a couple of people, et cetera, et cetera. So it just goes into more control. The controllers know about it, and they push it, and then they arrest you for it, and then you're in the system. So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you raise an interesting point about asking the question of like, do you have the right to harm yourself? I mean, it is your property, your body is your property. You have the right to do with it what you choose. But at what point at what point is that self-harm? What I thought of was like, at what point is that self-harm, causing harm to others? I mean, when it's time to get the fix, what are you doing? I mean, in a perfect world, these things may be readily available, and you could get them through, the black market wouldn't even be the black market. It would just be the market.
Sure.
Because the black market, that name is only its name because it's the underground, because it's the back door, and it's because it's not thought of as the proper way to go and do things. But I mean, it is kind of in the grand scheme of things, it is the proper way to do things, because you're not participating in a bigger picture, a bigger level of a structure of harm that is the government and the way that they set their things up. I mean, for crying out loud, I grew up and you could get arrested for having a little nugget of weed on you, and I did. That happened to me. But now I can just go down the street and walk into a store and grab this, and it's like, all right, so there's a point of moral relativity there. Of course, we could touch on that, but I guess what I'm really trying to draw attention to is that, like, what I was trying to draw attention to is that the government is like kind of funneling people into doing it the way that they want it done, and then at the same time, what we need to really think about is a lot of the things that people find themselves addicted to are only available to us. If we look back in history, the government is what made them available to the people. I mean, when you look at like the crack cocaine and heroin and everything through the 60s, even before that, sure, it was in a lot of medicines and they were approved by by your health experts and all that BS. But when we really take a hard look at it with how things are going today, I truly do think that it's an outcome, because the only way that we got to this outcome is because the government kind of dipped their fingers in it, and they did things through the military, and they did things through the CIA and everything. Like, they were running drugs into this country and putting them into certain neighborhoods and keeping certain people down, and it's the usage of that drug that causes the effect of what we see with drug abuse. And I really do want to like focus on making sure that the people listening to this know that it's about that word. It's not my goal is not to really focus on drug use. It's to focus on drug abuse, which is when you really start causing harm through the use of the thing, and the overabundance of dependency that has been created by the abuse of drugs, in my opinion, is something that the government really loves. The fact that there's a lot of people out there then they're the biggest drug dealers on the face of the planet with their prescription medicine and everything like that anyways, and they're creating drug addicts and children on a daily basis. I did a whole presentation about this at the Shattering the Illusion conference, about how one way that they're creating creating drug addicts and children, and to me that's disgusting, of course. But I mean, I don't know. I really do think that that the word abuse is what needs to be focused on.
Well, if you actually look up the etymology of addict, it means to devote or give up, right? So you're devoting your time and your energy and your focus to something, and you're giving up something as well, right? There's always going to be a give and take. So really, it's, when most people hear about drug addicts, they think of like the hardcore shit, right? Heroin, cocaine, this kind of stuff. When in reality, being an addict means something you're spending too much time on that has a negative consequence to yourself, whether that is you're pounding, fucking 6 Red Bulls a day, or, I mean, it can be a numerous amount of things, any type of habitual habit, right? You can be an addict. I mean, I honestly say, the human experience, people are addicted to the human experience, meaning that it's materialism and it's all about feeling good all the time. I just want to feel good. I want my base desires and my base pleasures to be, constant, right? Without activating that higher order thinking and having, higher purpose and meaning. It's good to recognize too that, especially in modern society, the majority of kids are coming into the world, during the birthing process, totally drugged up, right? So that's going to have it, an effect on the body as well. And then like you were saying, James, your presentation, that was excellent. I mean, it's woven into the fabric of society. Allopathic medicine, it's all about symptoms. You feel bad, you go to the doctor. What do? They give you some kind of pills it's a band-aid. Ultimately, that's what it is, right? It's a band-aid. It's numbing the symptom, but you're not really getting down to the core psychological factor of why you do what you do. And this is where, turning inward to really analyze your daily habits and your behaviors.
Yep, absolutely. I wanted to add on that, and St. John Penwell has done a lot more research into this than I have, but the thimerosal that you experience in vaccines affects certain receptors in your brain, which then lead you to some astronomical increase in likelihood of addiction. So they basically create addicts. People will say, "Oh, I'm prone to addiction," or I'm likely to, I have a high propensity for addiction. They've proven that the thimerosal will do that just based on how it interacts with you. So yet another negative side effect of the vaccination program. And also to go on to what we were talking about, just in the fact that addiction can be a lot of things. One thing that I noticed, and it's something I've always prayed, if you will, about for a long time, many years, is that I wish I could eat less. I've never really been fat or anything. I mean, kind of. I did get fat when I was alcoholic, and especially right when I quit. But I always just thought it would be better if I could eat less food and still be fully healthy. Like that was in my mind. It wasn't like how to do that. I don't know. I wish I could eat less and still be super healthy. And I've basically figured that out to an extent. But eating is such an addiction. The whole idea of preparing the food. I mean, look at chefs and look at all that. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for it. It's great. I love it. I love having a really well cooked meal. But at the same time, I love the fact that I've streamlined down to, I do a lot of shakes, protein shakes that have nutrition in it. And I eat one meal a day, basically one good solid food meal, which then limits the amount of toxins I'm getting and all that kind of stuff, and still get to enjoy it. But anyway, eating is big time an addiction.
Yeah, a couple of the things that you guys said makes me think of Brave New World. Like how they would the babies are being gestated in bags, and they would like go and which was it, like the Epsilon class or whatever? They would go and they would like inject some alcohol like right into the baby or something like it was something along those lines. I'm having trouble remembering exactly how it all went down, but they were creating this slave class of people like that had a dependency, on alcohol, and it would like dumb them down and get them all ready for alcoholism and whatnot. It was pretty bad. That's something that just came to mind. And it's like they're when you were talking about the vaccines, that's that's what popped into my head, and I figured I'd bring that up. But we have a comment from Angela Green, she's one of the alumni from the How to Become the True Media course. She asked, how do you not harm yourself? If I harm myself, then I harm others by proxy. It's not like, I would answer that by just saying it's not exactly like, by drinking the alcohol or doing the drug that you're like, harming someone else. It's more just kind of the things that people do to get the fix. It's more like it's more like that than just like directly all of a sudden like, oh, you're doing this thing, and then next thing you know is somebody down the street from you. It's not like that. I don't know if that helps answer her question, but what do you guys think of that question?
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. And I would say, I mean, it's really, I'm a firm believer. I mean, you can do whatever you want to yourself, right? I mean, obviously that's a gradient of awareness. What matters is the actions that come after, because especially when you're addicted to something or you have it, I mean, when does it become a problem, right? It becomes a problem when there's negative consequences that are surrounding you. If you need money for it, so you're stealing money or whatever it may be. It can be a porn addiction, right? I mean, but even with something like a porn addiction, there's no external harm to others except yourself and what it's doing to your body. Now, the negative consequence on that is, lack of motivation, lower testosterone, et cetera. So it really depends on the actions that come after that. But that's why I was saying you have to have that awareness. We're talking higher awareness here. Then you understand how the body operates, and you mainly understand psychology. When you're an addict, especially on some really hardcore chemical based substances, that will keep you fixed in a fixed state of mind, mainly in the mammalian and the reptilian. You're always going to end up in the fight or flight area, right? Even alcohol, if you have just a couple drinks a week, the days that you're not drinking, your cortisol levels actually fucking like double. They go up when you're not drinking. So it's kind of understanding how the effects on the body. That's why it's really important especially kind of in our community where we talk about morality, which is great, objective morality, that's awesome. But the internal work of self-development is really about ethics. Morality is what you can't do, what you can and can't do. Ethics is what you should or shouldn't do. That's how I view it.
Cool.
Wonderful point, Will. Very well said too, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure.
Yeah. There's definitely a distinction between morality and ethics for sure. Yeah.
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 Absolutely. And it all starts internally for the individual, right? So that's why I call it internal ecology. If your inner environment is fucked up and you're not taking care of it, and you're not taking care of your internal garden, and you're getting invasive species is just growing and weeds are growing and stuff, well, guess what? That's going to affect your actions and your behavior. And then, yes, absolutely, you can violate someone. So
I know I personally violated a lot of people around me, if nothing else, just by constantly lying. I was always being deceitful, whether it was, they would smell alcohol on me then, and I was lying, oh, that was from last night, and it's just carried over into today. And because I was able to be highly functioning, I was able to do that. So I was driving around for sure what would have been drunk on a numbers basis. Now, was I actually drunk? Not really. I mean, physically, but by the numbers I sure was, and I had booze in my system. So yeah. But everything becomes a lie, like my stepdaughter and my fiance kind of, at the time, like it was just, they were totally damaged by me. And I wasn't trying to, and I certainly didn't have that intention, but man, that's what was happening. And my dad and my mom had to just deal with my stupidity when I would call them just crying about who knows what. I've either been kicked out, or I'm about to be kicked out, or who knows. And just the weight you put on other people, the burden that you become, that I did, you know what I mean? This doesn't happen with everybody. And that's the thing. That's why I'm not down on drugs per se, and alcohol. If you can do it wisely and you can do it with moderation, then more power to you, because that's really what it is intended for. But also to add to what Will was saying, I think it fixes you when you're doing these things. It fixes you in a consciousness, so I think maybe the idea of psychedelics is to show you that there is a higher aspect that you can get to, and that's maybe what you're to aspire to. Whereas cocaine and all the other ones, they're so egocentric. They're so about you feeling good as opposed to expanding yourself. And so, to me, no drugs is the way to go. Now that's an ideal world. And I mean, I still smoke weed, and I have a couple pain pills if I need them here and there. But the idea of going without drugs, I think, is really where we should be going as humanity, maybe used more appropriately than we do now. As there certainly wouldn't be widespread pharmaceutical in an ideal world. There certainly wouldn't be widespread recreational drug use. It would be more for certain reasons. I think we would use it more appropriately.
Yeah, what you just said makes me have to ask the question. Geez, I really wonder what a world without the big pharma companies out there pushing this shit on not only children but adults and everything like that. I wonder, what would that world look like? Would we really even feel the need to have these types of conversations? Would it even be that bad? What with the herbal remedies such as, cannabis, even psilocybin mushrooms, things like ergot, things that actually just spring up from the ground, going on a journey with ayahuasca, like things that just happen to be in nature. Like there's got to be nothing wrong with that, right? Like, I mean, and I'm not even trying to ask that facetiously. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with that,
Yep.
But what about these synthetic, these things that are just boop invented in a lab and then just thrown into people's faces and shoved down their throats. Here, have some Adderall. Here, have some Oxycontin. Here, have this next pill and that one. And ask your doctor about this. We're one of 2 countries on the face of the planet that's allowed to have commercials on cable television about pharmaceutical drugs. Us in New Zealand, and that's it. Ask your doctor if this is right for
Wow.
you. The side effects are diarrhea, strokes, blood clots, this and that. But you'll be happy at dinner because you'll be able to eat that next slice of pizza. But
Yeah.
you might have a stroke, or it can, make your hair turn yellow, and your eyes are going to roll in the back of your head. But hey, you're going to be able to putt a little better on the golf course. You know what I'm saying? Like these ideas come to my head, and what you said about the deception and the lying and everything like that. Obviously, we know that to be one of the transgressions against natural law. It's how harm is caused. It's about a form of theft, right? I mean, and we're not. That brought to mind the idea that to bring up that it's about becoming somebody else's problem too,
Right.
where you're now taking away from them their time and their energy, which could be better spent on making their own autonomy more solid. And it's like this ripple effect where it's like you're not necessarily stealing anything of value from them when we think of things that like are physical, but we're talking about spiritually valuable things, time and attention, and
Yeah.
you're stealing that from them instead. You know what I mean?
And there's a level of trespass in there too, because they didn't want me there, but she wasn't strong enough to kick me out. So, on the flip side of the coin for her, and we've talked about this because we still managed to be friends, and that was her realizing at a point, how far am I going to let him push me? When do I say, nope, you're done? And that was hard for her. And, but, and that taught her something, and she gained something from that whole experience too. And, but it takes that, because she could have cut me off way sooner and said, you're done, dude. This is one of my episodes instead of 8 of my episodes. Your apologies become worthless after 7 and 8, especially to the kids. They don't care. They're like, whatever, dude, I'll forgive you. And they roll their eyes. It's like, ugh. It's taken 4 years of sobriety so that they actually believe me now. So,
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thanks.
Congrats. That's the funny thing about apologies. Like, the people that care about you the most, they want to accept them, and they'll accept them over and over again, and they'll put their own needs to the side, because they believe in you and they're giving you chance after chance. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that second chances are weapons to those that are granted them. You give someone a second chance or a third chance, that's a weapon you just put in that person's hand. And a person of an addict's mindset, they're going to take that weapon and they're going to use it, because it's like, oh man, there's a word for it and it's escaping me right now, but it's enabling. That's what a second chance or a third or fourth chance is. It's enabling them. And they're going, and I remember back when I was still off running, I'd be like, oh yeah, I pushed the envelope. I know what I can get away with now. And then next time I'll just try to go a little bit further with it. And it's completely a manipulative type of person. Now, I was one of those people. I manipulated people left and right to get my way. And it was all about me, 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 me. It was satanic. It was fucking satanic. And the whole, like, again, the overarching message here is that, like, this type of mindset is exactly why we're here in the condition that we're in. And there are people out there that like to have small time exploiters out there so they can be the big time exploiters. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's tough, man. A lot of people, they start hearing about these great ideas of anarchy and natural law, and learning about natural law and anarchy, and being like, oh, so I get to do whatever I want. And it's like, no, not exactly. I wouldn't say whatever you want. I mean, sure, but there's going to be consequences. But like, look where those consequences have led us, and and I kind of want to bring up how learning about natural law has really been kind of like a self-help type of like learning method for me personally, because before I started really learning about natural law and what anarchy really meant, because I was one of those teenagers that run around, yeah, anarchy, woo, like it's like that scene from oh shit, that Will Ferrell movie where the little kids are like, anarchy, I have no idea what it means, but I love it,
Yeah.
It's like you get a little bit of the idea. It's like anti-authority. I thought that's what it meant, and it sort of does mean that, but it's not like it's really put out there a lot to the younger crowd and these guys that want to do whatever they want and get away with it, about like the self-empowerment and self-responsibility that it really does take in order for us to live in a world where a government doesn't exist. Even in the fashion in which the government exists today, if we wanted to change that, a lot of people would need to change their own actions in order to even get to that point. Like,
Mhm.
even say we had a federal government that was, the libertarians were running the show now, and they're holding the gun and everything like that, and they've got all these fake ass principles that they want to hide behind, and they don't really mean what they say, but they're going to say it anyways. And even if we had that, a lot of people would have to change the way that they live their lives in order to even get to that point. Even to pitch your tent at that part of the mountain,
Yep.
a lot of people would have to like get their shit together, because I mean, damn it, like we got to face it as a community if we want any change. Like, there's a lot of people out there that subscribe to this, and they consider themselves to be these people that understand natural law and everything like that, but they're leaving the door wide open for people to walk in and say, no, because of your actions, because of the way that you treat yourself,
Mhm.
you're letting us control you.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people need to realize personal responsibility, and then nobody wants to, and that's why this is such a hard thing. It's a hard sell because you're saying, "Hey, why don't you do it yourself?" And I mean, to you guys and us and our crowd, that sounds great. That because we've been through some stuff that realizing no one's gonna do it for you. You might get strung along for a while on a teat of some sort, but it leads you to failure. And at least us, we've decided we don't want to be that, even though I've been, and I don't know all you guys, but I've been real close to it, real down there. And so I was like, no. And I certainly didn't want anyone to try to do it for me. So if people can understand personal responsibility, I mean, dude, the government would go away. It wouldn't make sense to have it if everybody had in their mind, well, I mean, just God, I mean, I got to do all these things for myself, and then I help my neighbors and my community, and with just that little mindset, man,
Mm.
that's the big change, to me.
Yeah, I really like what both you guys are saying, and especially in our community, it's like once someone comes to the awareness, the self realization about anarchy, right? Do no harm, take no shit, sovereignty, self ownership, responsibility. This is really, I mean, having that awareness is kind of the beginning of what of really understanding what it means to be a human. See, most people are alive, but they're not living, right? Most people are humans, but they're not being. So it's like there's so many different catchphrases you can say with that. But ultimately, this is why I gravitated to occultism, because occultism is about that internal development. And, I think this is a big message for the anarchy community. It's like, look, you want to do away with government. That's great. I'm all for that. But ultimately, it's the change is internally. You have to do the inner work so actions will change, right? And it's like this has to be conveyed. It's ultimately about healing. I mean, we can't lie to ourselves that the current state of the world is fucked up, but it's you're losing if your internal world, if you're a slave internally as well. Understanding that there's external enslavement going on, that humanity is enslaved, does not mean internally you are a slave. And that's what I see addiction as, right? Addiction and being a slave are synonymous. It's one and the same. And the social engineers, that's exactly where they want people, because you're dependent. And when you're dependent, you're going to seek help. And of course, these institutions, the government, are right there for that codependency.
Yeah, because you're right. You're absolutely right. Brilliant point, Will, because yeah, the addiction, it's like a almost like a slave master of your own choosing,
Hmm.
you
Yep.
know.
For
So
Yeah.
sure. You
The
can't
the
serve two masters, right?
yeah, you
That
can't.
saying.
And that's the kind of the whole idea of it is it's not no rules, it's an internal monarchy, right? So you're your
Mm.
ruler, and and going by the simple principles found in natural law. It's real basic that we should all know how to behave. This should be so much easier than it is. It's crazy. It's mind-boggling when one sits back and thinks about how truly simple it is. And it's the same thing with a lot of really good things, is that they're very simple, but they're extremely hard. Getting sober was very simple process, but extremely difficult in certain aspects, and different for different people for sure. um, but the simplicity is kind of where you're on the right track, because when it's simple, truth is almost always simple. It's always the most simple. And in a situation of correcting a wrong, and or, like, say, building a society and doing it right, it requires strength. It requires internal strength. It requires spiritual strength, mental and physical strength.
Mm.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people are experiencing addiction, and they're turning to some alcohol or drug, whatever. They've got something internally it's off. They're out of balance,
Mhm.
and they're turning to this thing to kind of quiet things down with what's going on inside their minds. Even it gets brought to a point with some things where like like the physical, their body is starting to hurt. They've used it so much that the withdrawals are starting to kill them,
Yeah.
or they're just falling apart, and and it's just a sign that if you're chasing after some sort of high all the time, it's just a sign of internal, you're unbalanced internally, mind, body, spirit, all of that is just, it's off balance. And that's what the beautiful thing about learning about natural law, is that it teaches you balance. It teaches you, it's a method of finding that balance. It's kind of holding your hand if you're willing to get yelled at from time to time from like people like Mark Passio, even like people like myself, will, all of us here tonight, like that's our mission, is to teach people about natural law, because that's the key to freedom.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is about finding balance internally, so you can be a player on the field and really make a fucking difference. Because if you're just drowning yourself in alcohol or drugs or whatever all the time, you're not really being an agent of any sort of effect here. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I throw that to you guys and the audience out there listening.
Mhm.
I thank everybody for tuning in tonight so far. It's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ultimately comes down to education, right? I mean, something that we've all talked about, educating the youth. This is why when we're young teenagers, we experiment, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But there's a reason why there's a drinking age, and the drinking age in the U.S. is 21, and what is it, like 14 in France or some shit like that. It's like, and you could see that there's different effects from that. So there's always resistance when there is any type of control, right? So I mean, for instance, like the drinking age. Of course, teenagers are going to go out and fucking binge drink and get all crazy and shit, right? Because it's forbidden. They're being raised that you can't do this thing. It's interesting because when I was growing up, my dad, he came to me when I was pretty young. I mean, I don't know, 12, 13, somewhere around there, of coming of age. And he was like, hey, you're getting to that age where you're going to want to experiment, and that's fine. But if you want to drink a beer, smoke a cigarette, smoke a joint, just come to me and we'll talk about it and we'll do it together. That's literally what he said. And I'm like, damn, all right. And me and my dad are close, and that wasn't a shock to me that he said that. And that relationship was was pretty tight. I wasn't the kid that was lying to their parents and going off and, smoking weed and stuff like that. I didn't have to do that because the connection with my parents was solid, and it was one based on trust and communication. So, it always comes down to educating, especially the youth, for sure, on any subject, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was probably just more, I don't know if I was scared, but I was convinced by Nancy Reagan, I think, that my mom didn't have to worry about me at all. All my friends wanted to do drugs, and they were in high school and everything else, and I was literally like the good kid. Like I thinking back on it too, I was like, I hung out with them. I didn't have a problem being around them. I just didn't want to do it. And it was just kind of odd because I definitely did want to do it later. And I made it a point, but I think I just was maybe, and it was, ultimately a good thing that I did let myself go through my first 20, probably 4 years before I really started doing drugs, and just get my brain developed and get through all that first stuff, because I'm already weird enough.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's talk about personal experience for a minute. If we're all cool with that, I'll throw my hat into the ring about that. I mean, I was a teenager and I started using some drugs, and I was in an extreme amount of pain, like just emotional pain. I wasn't really raised by my father as much as maybe he should have, and I was exposed to the whole idea of alcoholism at a very young age. And then the dude that did raise me, he ended up passing away, and I was about 16 years old when he passed away, and it all happened pretty much right in front of me. It's not, I'm not saying that it wasn't like a heart attack and I watched him die. I just watched this man who was really strong and big, and he got sick and withered away to nothing and ended up passing away, and it all happened very, very quickly. And I was living at home at the time, and we had hospice and everything like that coming in, and it all just kind of fell apart in front of me. And I really just, I fell apart too. And I didn't really have a very strong support system. Everyone that I was relying on was distracted by this incredible tragedy that was happening to us as a family. And I was kind of being the youngest of 5 kids. They were all burnt out on children by the time it was time to really focus in on what was going on with me, and what was happening with me. And I wasn't being paid attention to. So meanwhile, I'm like all smiles and trying to help out as much as I can when I'm around them, but when I'm not, I'm like off in the background going and doing shady shit with my friends and drinking and smoking weed and everything like that all the time. And it wasn't very good for me, and I ended up committing some crimes and doing some really shady shit. And one thing leads to another, of course, and it's like, oh well, I'm wicked drunk, and oh well, here, I'm gonna have some Adderall because I had a prescription to that, and like I'm just gonna eat some more of that, and I can drink some
And I
more.
can drink more. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh well, the Adderall's all gone. I got my subscription, my prescription to that is all gone. Oh, well, let's go get some cocaine and have some fun with that, Dr. Roxo style. And anyone that knows that reference, you're the man. Anyways,
Cocaine?
anyways, jokes aside, it was a long, long road, and it wasn't until I've been sober for almost 2 years now. And when I got the job that I have now, they drug test at that job. And I don't really support the reasons why they drug test, but it has done wonders for me. I got to get it in my head that like I wasn't really allowed to go and feel comfortable with the kids, and having to have the job so we can have the shelter and the food and the what have yous. I needed something like that at the time. And it did wonders for me. No more smoking weed. I can't get away with doing that. No more doing cocaine. I can't get away with doing that. It was just one thing after another. Fell off, and I was drinking a lot, like a lot, dude. And that was up until about 2 years ago. And the things I would do, like I would get into fights. And if I couldn't get into the fight with the person that pissed me off, I would literally fight myself. Like, I would start punching myself in the face as hard as I possibly could, right in front of the people, or, like, in front of other people when I was away from that person, and it was terrible.
Wow.
Absolutely terrible. I mean, my face puffed out and, like, bruised up and and I'm not even joking. I think I even have pictures of it. I'm not gonna show
Yeah.
them, but I was a terrible drunk. Ran my mouth off all the time and everything like that, and, like, I was just not a good person. Not fun to be around.
Right.
And what really it came down to is I was just tired, and I knew my whole entire life was gonna fall apart, and I just had to, like, stop. You know what I mean? I had to stop. I had to find a way to stop, and then, I did the work. I'm the one that stopped drinking, but then what really happened is, like, I started listening to this guy, Mark Passio, and what had really happened that got me to really consider quit drinking was I listened to a podcast, with Joe Murray, and he was with, like, Ivan and Nathan, I believe, and Francesco, and Joe, who's been sober for a while. That's why he was on volume 1 of this topic. He had basically said on the podcast that I listened to, and it was a few days after I recorded with Ivan, and Ivan actually sent me the podcast, and he goes, "You're gonna like this," because I had told I was drinking on air. I was drinking while recording the fucking podcast with Ivan, and I smacked the microphone, and I went and told Ivan I feel like such an asshole for that. And he goes, "Oh, it's no big deal." And then he goes, "Well, here, listen to this podcast. You're gonna like this." And I listened to it, and Joe Murray basically was on there saying, if if you're doing all these things and you consider yourself like an anarchist or you're making a difference, guess again, like, you're a fucking joke, you fucking loser. And I'm like, dude, he's talking to me. He doesn't even know me yet, and he's talking to me. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, I'm listening to Mark Passio talk about, like, if you want to have any effect in this world at all, and he's like doing how he does his thing, and I'm just like, these guys are talking right to me, and I gotta get my shit together. I'm totally just I'm a fucking joke, and I just didn't want to. I didn't want it anymore. I didn't want it. I wanted to be clear headed. I don't like the world around me. I still don't like the world around me, but I'm much better off affecting it and being an agent of change and being a good person in this fucking terrible world. If I can at least think straight and be clear in my thoughts, and maybe my words don't always come out right, but up here, I'm a lot
Yeah.
more clear headed, and like that's the point about natural law and the effect of actually, so natural law on a, like, as a causation, as on the causal level, it affect the way that it affects the world. If we all learned natural law, and I know this kind of sounds utopia, like almost like a utopia, but if we all learned natural law of these things that can heal us and find balance for each individual, we could effectively, what it does is it renders the people that are the slave masters, it renders them obsolete. If we learned objective morality, if we applied it to our lives and actually gave a shit about ourselves, because they love it when we don't love ourselves, they're eating that shit up. And I'll say it until I'm blue in the face tonight. I'll scream it from the hilltops. I don't give a damn if I'm talking to one person or a million people. They love it when we hate ourselves. And a lot of people that are suffering from addiction and drug abuse, they hate themselves. These people, they hate themselves for some reason. And I'm just saying that it's okay. That whatever the reason is, like, we can figure it out together. You just need to commit to yourself that you're a worthy person and that you're worth love, because you are. And you can stop. You can. I did. Jonathan did. Will did. We all found something within ourselves that made it possible for us to put the stuff down and to carry on with our lives and be better people. And I have a feeling, and maybe I'm not the only one, that learning about natural law really made a world's worth of fucking difference to actually stamp it into your head that you're worth the fucking trouble that it would take to get to the place where you can take care of yourself. And I really just want to make sure that people know that I love you, and that if you need somebody, I can try to make a couple minutes. I can try to give you a couple minutes of my time to at least just nod my head and be like, yeah, I get it. Because I do get it. I'm sorry to take up so much time on my little rant here, but I'm fired
Oh,
up.
all good. Yeah,
And
go for it.
like, it needs to be put out there that this is the solution. All that self-loathing behavior, all the feelings that you have inside is because you've been lied to your entire life by a group of people that you were told are there to care about you, and they don't give a shit about you. In fact, the only thing they care about is you perpetuating the self-loathing behavior that has put them in power in the first place. And if we stop with that shit, at least we have an edge. And that's all I got to say for now.
Yeah, my sponsor made it a point to remind me that it's you're not a piece of shit. You're behaving like a piece of shit. You know, like there's a definite difference, and to understand that you're you're a child of God, you know, is what how he expressed it. And don't forget that, and don't think any less of yourself just because of how you've been. You it's your actions that are the problem, and it's your actions that are going to save you and get you out of this, you know, ultimately. So that's and that's just the way the program went for me. You know, I had a really good sponsor, and I took it for what it was, and I left the aspect of it that is just too much for me, you know. So, but I definitely got healed through a 12-step program, through the Alcoholics Anonymous program. So, and yeah, like I said, the biggest part of it was just realizing that you're worth it. You know, you are a absolutely everything that the universe has to offer is reflected inside you, and it's just a matter of finding that motivation to bring that back out of yourself, you know, and be an expression of the divine down here on earth.
Yeah, man. Well said. Yeah, I've seen AA work for some people. I've seen it not work for some people, and make it actually worse for some people. It really it's a personalized process. I mean, with my addiction, this was 10 years ago. And I haven't drank in I don't know, 4 years or something like that, by choice. Alcohol wasn't where my issue lied. My issue lied with and I've always kind of been proud of being a grounded person that knew myself really well, but I actually did not know anything about psychology, especially my own psychology. So coming out of my music career, I mean, I'm partying all the time, clubs, VIP lounges, doing touring and shit like that. The classic stuff, right? Drinking all the time, partying. Um, and I was running wild, working, getting my stuff done. I don't really can see the issue there, even though I was on that path for kind of, heading for destruction. It wasn't until I got into a toxic relationship where not knowing my psyche and how it operated really started to play against me, because now what I'm doing is I'm burying trauma down into my psyche, right? Deep down inside. It's going into my unconscious, and my shadow is coming out. And, unfortunately, her and I were codependent, right? She had a lot of stuff when I first got into a relationship with her, and I latched onto that. And now I just, the path that I was walking, I just doubled down. And in a toxic relationship, especially two younger people that have no idea on how their own mind works, their own ecology, it was a recipe for disaster. And all of a sudden, I remember actually the first day where I realized that I was in bad shape, when it was pills, it was opiates. She also had Adderall, so I was pretty much doing the combination. And I did take it to another level. She had a prescription, and she kind of stayed within her little buffer, but I was getting more, because I realized that I didn't have any. I didn't want any. I was like, fuck, I got to take a break. Well, I got sick, and I couldn't go to work for 2 days, and I had no clue what was happening to me, and then it dawned on me like, "Oh, fuck, I'm going through withdrawal."
Hmm.
I thought I had, like, the flu or something, right? And it just got worse and worse, and it scared me, and I wasn't prepared for it, so, I hit up my boys. Now I'm on this train of, um, you know, just stay on it, keep getting it, not ready to deal with it, and didn't have the tool set to handle that. Well, fast forward, a year of that shit, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna be a father, right? And that was a huge realization that I need to get my shit together, and the pressure really hit hard, and mainly just getting up in the morning and looking at myself in the mirror, and one, feeling shame, which I never really fully felt before in my life because I've been a grounded man, and now I'm feeling these emotions that totally take me out of my own character that I haven't really experienced before.
Sure.
Shame is different from guilt. Guilt is when what you do to someone else, you feel guilty. Shame is what you do to yourself. That is, extremely toxic inside. It'll eat you up inside. So I'm feeling the guilt. I'm feeling the pressure of being a father, but also the fear. For a good several months, I thought I was going to die. And it wasn't like, I mean, I was going to work and I was handling my shit, paying bills, going to work every day, but it was all up here, all in my mind, man. I mean, it was really just playing a number on me. So it eventually it got so bad that I'm like, I gotta do something about this. So I just started taking in information, psychology, that mainly psychology, how the mind operates, just addiction in general, habits, all kinds of stuff. And that led me actually to occultism. And slowly but surely, I started to pull myself out. I used many other techniques. I used plant medicine that had a huge effect. DMT helped me out a lot to kind of break down the calcification of just my ego, and then I climbed my way out and just started focusing on the good habits, replacing the bad habits with the good habits. And really, it was really just pretty much self-awareness. I was really focusing on myself every day, actions, thoughts, emotions, because by that time I'm sober, and then shortly after my daughter's born, and I was addicted to self knowledge. Throw a little pun in there, but that's what sent me down the path to, okay, I want to understand how the mind works and keep going. And that eventually led me down to mainly Hermeticism, and then eventually to like Mark Passio's work and natural law. So it really was a good kick in the ass, a dark period. I would not take it back at all. It was the catalyst to my own awakening. So
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about my whole experience too. I wouldn't trade any of it in, even though, damn, there was some horrible shit in there. But yeah, I was drinking. I was actually living in South Carolina, and I had just managed to quit smoking crack because I had become an alcoholic because I was a crackhead. And I got to a point where I was just begging God literally every night, like, help me quit. You know what I mean? I couldn't understand why. I mean, I've prayed my whole life, and prayers have been answered, like, very visibly, you know what I mean? And so, like, something so important, I was just blown away why I wasn't getting any help, what I thought was any help with this problem. And so after enough time of really just begging, I was, a voice came to me, right? I mean, it was myself just kind of telling me, but I just knew that the way I was going to get rid of this was to tell the two people really that I had been lying to and sneaking around with it, and come clean to them. And I was just like, oh my God, I would have never picked that for myself to do. It's the hardest thing there is to do. And so I did that with my mom and my fiance at the time. And I had to just sit him down and tell him, hey, I smoke crack. That's a pretty humbling experience. And it went away. I never wanted to do it again. And I come to find out later when I was in the AA program that was basically step 5, and I just came clean about all my shit, at least in that regard, about that thing. And that's what kind of helped me do it, was just that action of coming clean. And so I managed to leave here and head out to Colorado. And if it hadn't been for my friends and my new fiance that was about to be enabling me, I don't know that I would have ever gotten better, because I needed to get really bad, because I mean, there was, in the 10 years that I was an alcoholic, I was plenty of a bad alcoholic, and still managed to function pretty well, but just, miserable inside, and just how I felt, and just constantly. And each new thing that would happen in your life, like, oh, you'd get a new job, and so that boosts your energy for a while, and now you can go, and it seems to pull you through a little more. And but towards the end of 10 years, and now I'd been with this girl for 3 years, and we had it started off great, and there was a couple of really loud rough patches kind of towards about 6-month mark. And then it just kind of went downhill from there, between, to me, really good, happy family type stuff, and then just really dark, me being an alcoholic, and just everybody's sad and upset. And then, one weekend, I managed to lose my job and get kicked out of the house, and have her tell me that we're done, all at the same time. So that was an eye opener, but it still wasn't what made me decide it was time to quit. So I went and I stayed on a friend's couch for about a week and a half, and that's what he gave me. He said, I just had a friend screw me over on a 3-month. It was supposed to be a couple weeks, and he ended up being here 3 months and stealing from me. So he's like, you got a week and a half, dude. So, okay. So in that time, I found another job. I found a job doing carpentry, which is what I wanted to do. And I managed to, at the last minute, spend my last paycheck from the last job and get myself a new house too. So it all culminated right at the exact right time. And it was about another week after that I was the lowest I've ever been in my life. The room that I was living in at this point was the room of a heroin addict who had passed away. So that's where I was now living. So literally living as a reflection of my own soul, like what was around me was what I was. And it was just a trashed out house with distant and non-speaking people. And it was just, such a horrible remembrance. You know what I mean? Like, just remembering back on it, it was just terrible. And I used to moan at night, you know what I mean? Like, and I know I would piss people off because I'd hear the wall get thumped on, and you know what I mean? My ex would always tell me that I'd cry for help. I'd just say help, help, help a lot when I was sleeping, half asleep. And I went and sobered up on my sponsor's couch for 5 days. And that was the weirdest, craziest hell that I've ever gone through. I've never had DTs before at all, not once. And when I decided I was going to not drink for that 5 days, I didn't have any shakes, but it was just the most hell I've ever been in. I can't even explain it, really. And I got up to go back to my hellhole for one more night, and then I was going to start sleeping on his couch. But I wanted to start my new job from there. I had all my stuff there. And as I left his house, I went and bought one more pint of vodka and drank that and went to bed. And then the next day, I just never bought any more booze. I never said that this was my last one, or, oh, this is it after this. I never, and I didn't even really give myself too much shit for sobering up for 5 days and then going and getting another pint. I was just like, this is how it is what, I didn't even beat myself up. I was just like, I'm doing it, and I did it. And that was the last one. And, it was a lot of work on my part for that to be that way, I think, as far as what I physically went out and did and how I changed my own attitude about a lot of things. But yeah, I wouldn't trade any of it for the world, for sure.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing. It's interesting because even with drinking, I would drink whenever I would go out with the guys or something like that. And then, but it wasn't the same. And when you get to, the next level of consciousness, that's pretty much a death. It's a death of the old self, right? And now you're a completely different being. I mean, in 7 years you have literally a full physical vessel. So the mind goes through that as well. Your levels of consciousness.
Mhm.
And I had no interest in drinking whatsoever. And then I just stopped. Didn't even bat an eye to it. Go to events, get-togethers. I'm drinking fucking kombucha or tea or something, right? And it was no big deal. Totally content with it. So I think that's something in society. People are scared of death, right? That's one of the primal fears, and scared of the unknown, really. And I look at my my addiction days. It was a death. It was a death of consciousness, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely felt I understood what it meant to be reborn. Like what the Christians always would talk about. Oh, you're being reborn, and I truly understood that when I went through this metamorphosis of getting sober, because that was like a real rebirthing process and getting in touch with my inner self and higher power, and just kind of making more of a connection of what that whole relationship was, and making it real and really being serious about it. And that really changed a lot of things. And as you go through the process of making the list, and literally going to all the people, and just and humbling yourself so severely that you're asking forgiveness, but then what else can I physically do to make up for these things? And you list the things that you can remember that you did. And man, the weight that gets lifted off your chest when you do that is ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yep. It all starts by telling the truth,
Personal responsibility. Yep.
being honest and being truthful not with first, I guess, with yourself first, because you have to understand that in order to give it to other people, you know? And
Yep.
it's like that through your story, Jonathan, it's like it sounds like that was the real the real starting point, is when you started to be, truthful with your mother and your fiance at the time, and then from there it just kind of was like, oh, bam, like, and then it's like, oh, okay, and then the truth set you free, as some would like to say, knowing the truth, I guess, is the real saying, right? But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Is I think a lot of people are afraid of truth, and I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
like I said earlier about they're trying to bury something down. Like that's something I went through, is trying to bury some sort of pain. I mentioned my stepfather. I never really there's a lot of things that I would really like to say to him, and I'll never get the chance to. And that was the thing. That was the pain. That was the source of it. And I never realized that. I was a teenager at the time. I was just some crazy kid running around, skateboarding and doing whatever. And I was really fucking angry. I felt like I had something stolen from me, and I didn't understand like I was going through all these things, learning how to be a man. I started a family of my own, and man, I could not be a luckier man than to have my wife. And she and I have been together for almost an entire decade, and we'd go and party and stuff, and like that's something that we bonded over, and having fun, and woohoo, couple crazy kids running around, having a blast. And then next thing you know, we got a baby on the way, and it's like, all right, time to step it up and
Yep.
be more responsible, be more response able, and I man, I couldn't be more blessed to have her by my side. The amount of times where like somebody would have been like, "Fuck you, dude. Get the fuck out of here, with your bullshit. We're leaving," and she stood by me. She has stood by me through thick and thin. And, you know, I couldn't be more grateful to have her. I mean, I am that type of person. Like I am not good by myself. I'm not good on my own. I left to my own devices, all hell breaks loose. and she was able to, she was able to, put her own. She doesn't have any of these kinds of issues. She doesn't, and it's so funny how these things happen because like, I think back to a story that my real father told me once is that when I was born, he about 8 months later he did something really terrible, and it hurt me, and it was because he was drunk and he was all high on cocaine and everything, and he did something really terrible, and he was asked to leave, let's put it that way. And you know he really struggled with this, and he went to my mother at one point, and it was like when I don't even think I was born yet, but anyways, long story short, he went to my mother at one point and said, I can get sober, I need your help, please, let's do this together. And my mother was like, fuck you, dude. And she was like, I'm going to continue drinking. And I found this all out, but I kind of had a similar situation where I went to my wife and I said, hey, honey, like, I got this going on. I really want to change. Can we do it like this? And she was like, absolutely. So like, there's no more alcohol in the house. Things that I repeated certain negotiation tactics that I learned from my father, and it worked out for me where it didn't work out for him.
Right.
And I'm so fucking grateful for it. And like now there's no alcohol around, and like I don't have to open the refrigerator and so I'm not like burdened with this kind of resentment, like, oh, you couldn't help me, and because that's
Right.
how it is, right? Like when you're in that mindset where you're like, oh, I'm the one that needs the help, and it's like, oh, somebody else better help me, and it's like, no, dude, you got to help yourself. But luckily, I've found somebody who's willing to have the patience with me, because
Yeah, that's good, man.
we got a mission here to help raise these goddamn kids,
Mhm.
and they need us. And she knows that, I know that, and like that's really what it came down to for me. Like, all of the getting yelled at through some of my mentors and listening to this podcast or that podcast here and there, whatever aside, like what it really came down to was like I got my son, and he's gonna grow up thinking this is how a man acts.
Hmm.
No. And I got my daughter, she's gonna grow up and think that this is how a man acts.
Hmm.
Absolutely not. Not in this world. No, hell no.
Mhm.
So that's what it came down to, really. Like, really, that was the thing that pushed me over the edge and made me go free falling into this life of sobriety. Was just looking at my kids and being like, all the anarchy and natural law, all that stuff that I could teach them or learn for myself, or however it all goes, all that aside, at the end of the day, one thing I can't get away from, no matter how much of this stuff I learn about, is that these kids are going to look at me. I'm their role model in different ways. And I can't not in good conscience be a dickhead in front of them all the time. Oh, there goes dad again, getting drunk, cussing up a storm or what. I cuss in front of my kids. It's freedom of speech, motherfuckers. It doesn't, whatever, but like the point is that if I'm drinking and acting the fool in front of my kids and stuff like that, if I can't like be civil, if I'm not able to take care of a problem at the house because I can't drive to the store, at least I know not to drive. But there's still a problem at the house that needs to be solved, and it's a fucking $3 light switch that's going to turn my furnace back on so we can have heat in the middle of February up here in New England, and I can't go and solve that problem because I've already had 6 beers and 2 cocktails and I've been home for 3 hours. And it's like, sorry kids, you can't have a hot bath and we don't have heat for the night because I'm drunk. And I can't go to the store. And like that's the reality of the situation. And it's like, wow, makes you go, holy wow, I'm a failure. And now what you do with that knowledge is what, like, are you going to allow yourself to be a failure, or are you going to get your ass up and actually do something about it so you're not that person anymore? Because if that's the type of life that you're living, then I mean, if anyone listening to this is like, wow, that sounds a lot like me, you got to do this for yourself too. You got to, man. Like these kids, they need good role models, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Hey,
it's
I'm gonna have to excuse myself, my friend. I've been I had my radio show earlier tonight too, and I've been up here for many hours this evening, and I got a camera on my mom, but she's just been sitting down there by herself so much this evening. I just need to go spend a little bit of time with her, I think. So,
awesome.
um, but
Respect that, brother. Respect
yeah,
that
and
for sure.
I so much appreciate you guys having me on to discuss this because again, you know, if there's any inspiration that could be gained from any of this, that's what my hope is for anybody out there that, you know, thinks it's not doable. I was so far gone. I mean, so far gone. I was begging to quit. My girl, I am the woman that I loved, man, and her daughter, and we had a family we were gonna make that happen. And I couldn't, even in the face of knowing I was gonna lose that and not having, and like I would even ask myself, I'm like, dude, what will you do if she kicks you out? Like, she was paying for I mean, I was so like in like done, you know, like I had to start from scratch when she kicked me out. Like, and I'm, you know, again, I'm so glad that that did happen. And like I said, just that story for anybody listening is, no matter how bad off you are, you can manage to get yourself back. You know, you can manage to get yourself back. It's just, it's really, it starts with you, with your willingness to do what it takes. And that's what it was for me. I just needed to be willing to do whatever was going to come my way in response of, okay, here's how you quit. I was going to have to put my faith in somebody who, you know, miracled that worked its way out synchronistically. And I was like, I'll do what you say. And I did, and it worked. So, like that was my story. So
Excellent.
thanks again for having me. And Will, it was great chatting with you again, my friend. And James,
Likewise.
great chatting with you again too, man.
Yeah,
And
Jonathan.
yeah,
You
well,
too.
one of these days, we just had Will on the show. Oh, it was a couple weeks ago, and then we'll have to get you on sometimes, James. I know that Saturday at 6 is maybe a hard time for you to figure out, but maybe we can finagle it somehow, or maybe we'll just do a recorded show and then we'll just play it for the time slot.
That's always an option too, man. You know,
Absolutely,
dude, thank you, Jonathan, so much for your time
absolutely,
tonight.
man.
I really, really appreciate it. You're a busy man, and you really pulled through for us tonight, man.
Well,
So
I had a good time doing it, man. I love doing this stuff, so I appreciate it. And
yeah,
like I said, thanks, guys.
I know you
Awesome.
do. That's why I made sure you were here for it. You know, we did the first one together. Here we are doing it, tackling this subject again together. It's really important that we get this message out to people that are of like mind in our community. And if we really hope to see the type of change that we want, this topic needs to be addressed. And I don't see it happening as often as maybe it should. And hey, it could just be me. This might be where my attention is drawn because it's what I think about, but somebody's got to talk about it.
You bet.
I couldn't be happier talking about it with you, John.
You bet. Well, thanks a lot, James. I do appreciate it.
Yeah,
Will and James, you guys have a good night.
Take
too,
care,
bud.
brother.
Talk
Good
to you
chatting,
soon.
man.
Yep.
All right, Jonathan Wright, everybody, go check out Jonathan Wright at what's his website? Nothing new under the sun.com. I believe that's his website. I
I
should have
think
asked
so.
him.
Yep, I
But,
think so. Or he's on the One Great Work Network too. You can go there and check that out.
That's true. Thank you, Will. You know,
The
all
shortcut.
right. The shortcut indeed. So where does that leave us tonight? So should we wrap it up with a little bit more talk about the beautiful things about natural law? What do you say, brother?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Absolutely. Also, I want to commend you and your wife, man, for when you were talking about you guys making that decision. That's huge, man. Those are the type of decisions that parents need to do. I mean, I was blessed that actually my dad and my stepmom made that a decision as well. They quit drinking, and they were party animals when I was like really young. But as I'm coming into age, me and my brother, they stopped drinking completely all the way till I was out of high school.
Nice.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's good, good healthy choices.
it was something that I was told was like this negotiation tactic of knowing that you can't be around it.
Mm,
And if you get to that point of knowing you can't be around it, then like subtract that element from the situation as best you can. And coming from, a broken home, I'll speak for myself on that. Like coming from a broken home, like I didn't want that for my children. I wanted a better life for them, and that's all nice and good, but like what kind of life am I really creating if I'm just a mess all the time? And like keeping the marriage together and having mom and dad in the house isn't enough. It's not enough. Just that as a baseline, I'll say it again, not enough. It's
mhm.
what you do, the actions you take while all that other stuff, all that beautiful stuff is going on that counts, you know? It's
Absolutely.
and it's like and I go to my wife and it's just an agreement. And it's like, okay, but if we go out for dinner or whatever, like she's her own person, she can do what she likes, but we share this space together. And
Mhm.
it's like, hey, I can't be around it. What do you say? And she was like, absolutely, let's do it. You know,
That's awesome to hear,
Yeah,
man.
she's not willing to sacrifice the family unit either, because
Mhm.
that's what makes us strong, you know,
Totally.
and having each other. And again, like as the baseline, that's the foundation, and all the rest of it, like the actions and everything, like that's what makes us strong. It's cohesive family
Yeah,
unit,
man.
and got to do what you got to do. I wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to let that get in my way, especially it's like, oh yeah, the kids are young enough, they'll never remember this stuff. And it's like, eventually that's going to stop. Eventually that is going to be a line where it's like, no, the kids are going
Yeah.
to start remembering things. There's memories there that they're going to anchor to, and you're acting like an asshole, and they're going to think that you're an asshole. So,
Oh,
uh,
for sure. Kids are smart. They pick up on it. They can
oh
see
yeah,
when daddy or mommy, they have when they drink this certain thing, they act funny or mean or whatever it may be, right? They're smart.
right. And it's like, well, how is this going on where this like abuse victim cycle or these kind of, would you call it that? Would you call it like a prescribed behavior? Would you call it just like this, you know, you picked it up from a role model of your own? And I saw it growing up. I saw the drinking and the acting the fool when I was growing up from parents, and that's kind of where it gets put into your head that this type of behavior can be acceptable. And it's like, well, that's them, that's not you. When you go and try to do the same thing, it's not going to be the same way. It's going to be totally different. You're your own person. So it's like when you start acting up, I mean, it's not going to have the same outcome as before. Plenty of people from like older generations are willing to look past so much bullshit just to say they have something. It's ridiculous. And
Yeah,
it's like, no, you got to hold yourself to a certain set of standards when it comes to, you know, realizing how, and honestly, how shitty the fucking world is, and how crazy and how deeply entrenched into this condition of slavery that the human race is in, and just
mhm,
realizing that you are not changing shit if you're just getting belligerently drunk all the time, like doing all this crazy stupid shit, and just being a bad example for how a real responsible person acts, like
definitely.
how somebody who wants autonomy, who wants to be like a real sovereign being. We already are sovereign beings, and that sovereignty is being stolen from us on a daily basis, but getting us back to where we're no longer victims of that theft. And your actions of drinking and drugging and all this crazy abuse going on to your own self is just reflected outward into the rest of the world. And it's like microcosm, macrocosm type of as above, so below level. And it's like that principle of natural law, that's what this whole entire conversation's about, is like you're abusing yourself, that's making it possible for others to come in and abuse the bigger picture idea of it all. And
Absolutely.
so it's not an easy, I can't imagine that it's really easy to really like, you know I don't know, be met with that kind of question, like, hey, like, let's will you do this for me, and be like, yeah. I can't imagine it being that easy. But it's like a lot harder to it's a lot harder to be divorced. And you're not really doing right by the kids if like if like you're the path that we were going down, if it had led to like us splitting up, it would not have been a very amicable thing. It wouldn't have been a good thing. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm looking at. Like, you're not doing right by the kids if that's the path. You know, I know you've been open about it before that you co-parent and like you have found some way to do it where it's healthy and and the job's getting done, you know, very, very well. But not everybody has that, you know, and
It was hard as fuck, man. It was some of the hardest times of my life and also some of the beautiful times, obviously, because I have my daughter with me. But yeah, we made that decision to stay under the same house for the formative years, you know, until she was almost 9. But that doesn't mean, you know, because we weren't together for 3 years of that, the last 3 years. So I mean, we did a good job at kind of not getting into it in the house and that kind of shit. It was more of like, you know, when I get home from work, mom checks out, you know, she goes, hangs out at a friend's house or something like that. So but I think that was better than what it could have been. And again, you know, there's no template for relationships. I mean, unless you're talking about, you know, objective principles of nature, morality, how to think, um, etc., nature, that kind of stuff. Yes, but people have to figure this out on their own with a sense of awareness. You know, co-parenting is the norm nowadays, and you know, parents, they just bring their resentments with them into their relationship. So I commend my daughter's mother and I for making that decision and sticking with it. Because I think that, I mean, my daughter really had no awareness that there was any kind of issues between her mother and I during that time, which is a blessing for sure. But it was still fucking tough, man. Tough.
yeah, I mean,
So,
there's a lot of people out there that would have dropped the ball on that and carried the resentments and what
sure.
the baggage of however it all went down and the reason why you aren't committed to one another anymore and all this other crazy shit. People get so attached to that, and be able to just set that aside and look at that little child, little
Yeah.
person that no one else is responsible for. Truly, nobody
Mhm.
else is responsible for but the parents. And to be like, no, our baggage, we'll figure that out some other time. Or this is the bigger mission. This is what's at hand here. This is what is at stake, is this little person's stability and the way that they see the world. Because what we're ultimately dealing with here, folks, is there's so many people that don't trust the world itself. They don't trust it. And that comes from the way that they see the first relationships that they're exposed to in their lives, and that's their parents. That's why parental abandonment on all levels is so detrimental to the overall health of society, is because you're forming within that little person's mind a system of trust, or a basis of trust that they're going to carry with them and apply that trust to every other encounter that they'll ever have in their entire lives. And for you and your daughter's mother to be able to, even if you didn't realize that at the time, but for you guys to realize that the bigger responsibility was to make sure that little girl got what she needed. And even if that means you two aren't together anymore, but you know what? Everybody co-parents. It's just
Mhm.
co-parenting is what you just do. You know, whether
That's
you're
right.
with the person or not, you're still co-parenting. It's just do you want it to be on the scale of good and bad, the polarities there? Do you want it to be good or do you want it to be bad? Do you want to turn out to have your kid have a very, very low amount of trust for the world, or do you want them to realize the world is a beautiful place? There's just a lot of people out there that want to fuck it up for the rest of us.
Yeah, man. For
You
sure.
know?
And that's you know, what it comes down to, like, we're all responsible for our continual healing, right? It's a continuous process in this world. How it's conditioned, right? It's a continuous process. The word healing means to become whole. So guess what? You got to look at all the parts. You got to analyze and have an awareness of all the parts of the self, and constantly seek for that wholeness, that holistic approach. And and like we were just talking about parenting and stuff, it's got a lot to do with addiction when when kids get older and stuff. Absolutely. It's funny, the Western scientism and medicine community, they think that addiction is genetic, right? It's hereditary, it's passed through genes. No, it's fucking not, man. It's behavior, it's habits, it's how the parents, what the kids see when and how they were raised and what they were around in the house, right? They're mimicking it's learned behavior is what it is. So that's where it starts, like you said. It starts in the nest, man, and the family dynamic.
Hell yeah. So we've been going for about 90 minutes, a little over 90 minutes. Do you think we
Sweet.
should wrap it up? What do you think? You got any?
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm
All
cool with
right.
that. Solid chat, man. Solid
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah, it needs to be said, and again, like if you have a handle on your own personal business, then you have a handle on it. That what that handle means is that you're not causing harm. You're not stealing. You're it's not getting in the way of you being a productive member of society. I mean, even if you, and it doesn't even mean shit. You could go into the middle of the woods for all I care, and live your own life the way you want to live it. I'm just saying that there's big things at stake here, and are we in this community? Are we doing our best? It's hard to look at yourself like that, folks. But I mean, it's something that I personally do on a daily basis. Am I doing my best? And I fall short on a bunch of stuff around the house or whatever. That aside, like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
My final message is this is a great topic, and hopefully we can do panels and bring more people on and continue this discussion. It's important because it has everything to do with the initiation process, right? This is something that is ongoing. It ties in with teachability and open-mindedness. It's just constantly observing your behaviors and analyzing yourself on what is serving you. That could be all kinds of things. That could be, too much phone action, too much social media. It could be belief systems and ideologies, right? So it's asking that question why to oneself, right? Why do I do this? Why do I do that? Etc. Why do I drink? Why do I have eggs and bacon in the morning when you should be maybe possibly drinking water and then waiting a few hours and having some fruit? I don't know. But asking those questions is important. And leveling up is what we're ultimately doing.
Beautifully said. So with that being said, I guess we'll call it a night. Big shout out to Chris Jansen this evening for simulcasting this stream out to his channels. Really big thank you to Chris for that. And yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, Chris is awesome. He probably would have loved to have been here, but he's doing his own thing, so the replay for this will be posted very soon, and it will be available on all of my channels. For all of you watching this on one of Chris Jansen's channels, come on over to A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth and check it out, and like and subscribe, share this show with your friends, and make sure that this message gets spread far and wide. Come on over to the One Great Work Network at onegreatworknetwork.com and check out all the wonderful content creators over there. We're really trying to preserve this information in the digital space to make it possible for generations to come to have access to it. So let's all work together on that by just like casting the net far and wide out there. And you can participate by coming over to that website. Come over to my website at freeyourmindne.com and check out my own stuff. Replays are getting posted constantly over there. And I guess that might be it from me. Will, say goodbye to everybody. Tell them where they can find
Goodbye,
you.
everybody. No, James, thanks for having me on. All the viewers, all the comments, you guys are great. It's awesome. I love having chats like this. And I'll just give out one website, Linktree/Will Keller. And I'm also on the One Great Work Network. So yeah, Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, all the comments, you're right. All the comments were great. I would have put more of them up, but the conversation just kept on keeping on. So it's tough
Sure
to
did.
really take them from the chat and put them on the screen when it just it's so quick, But
Absolutely, for sure.
yeah, that's it. That's it, guys. Tune in next week. We're gonna have the next edition of Black Pill Digest, hosted by Sean McCann. I'm the co-host on that show. And next week we will actually be hosting. We're gonna have Freeman Fly. We're gonna have Matt Landman and none other than Mr. Chris Jansen. So there's gonna be the 5 of us, and we're gonna be talking about chemtrails. So with that being said, everybody, I love you all. And as I end every stream, I will just remind everybody that it's our responsibility to do the right thing no matter the cost, and do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you expect some reward or not even a pat on the back, but just because it's the right thing to do. I love you all.